In the run up to the 2014 parliamentary election in India, Narendra Modi, the much reviled chief minister from Gujarat then, made a play for national politics and went on to become the country's prime minister. As Narendra Modi confronts his career's most buffeting political headwinds, another feisty and brass knuckles chief minister, Mamata Banerjee of the All India Trinamool Congress or the TMC, is making a play for national politics in the run up to the 2024 parliamentary election. Joining the TMC to help it become a pan Indian presence is the well known scholarly author, former career diplomat, and high profile politician Pavan Varma. After a nearly 2 year long hiatus following his expulsion from the Janata Dal United Party by his home state Bihar's Chief Minister Nitish Kumar, Verma firmly believes it is time to check the Bharatiya Janata Party's hubris by presenting the nation with a credible centrist alternative nationally. Pavan Verma spoke to Mayank Chai Reports from New Delhi.
Thank you for having me again. It's a pleasure talking to you, Mayank.
Likewise. Let me start off straight with what my brother Manoj commented on Facebook when I put a photograph of the upcoming interview. He's a great admirer of yours, and this is what he said. He said it's unwise because you're too learned to join the TMC.
I thank you, Manoj. I don't believe I'm too learned. I have some pursuits relating to learned matters. But I am there to contribute in whatever way I can to the creation of a robust pan Indian opposition in this country. And even the BJP should remember that no party, however strong in the transient framework, has a permanent monopoly on power. Any vibrant democracy needs an organized, cohesive, and pan national opposition, which is what I would like to contribute to doing under Mamata Banerjee's leadership.
You're talking as a pure Democrat at heart. You're up against an adversary who is not necessarily entirely democratic in its underpinnings. How do you counter that?
Well, democracy is the art of the possible. We are under no illusions of what is the nature and characteristic of our democratic adversary. But I think I speak for the TMC and Mamta ji when I say that we have a great deal of faith in the power of the people to reflect through the electoral process what they believe is right. And we hope to become the vehicle, the instrument, the conduit for that feeling to express itself rather than get lost in a fractured, unorganized, and disparate oppositional space. So we know who we are up against, but we have great faith in the democratic possibilities of a republic.
There is a growing perception now that with people like you joining, Chief Minister Banerjee is in the process of expanding the national footprint in time for 2024. I'm reminded of another feisty chief minister in 2014, who happens to be the prime minister now. Is that the game or is that the national play that she's making, you think?
Without a doubt, the TMC is in the process of acquiring a national footprint in this country. The TMC may at this moment be largely confined to West Bengal, but as many states will demonstrate, it will ultimately become a national party and play the role of a national opposition. That does not mean we will not have allies. Chanakya speaks of the core critical mass and then a concentric circle of allies. And we have natural allies in those parties which are also working in opposition to the BJP, and many of whom have kept the BJP at bay in their own regional states. So they are our natural allies, and we hope that in a planned, grassrooted, organized, and credible manner, we will be able to increase the presence of the TMC as part of an expansion phase which will definitely move towards making it national.
Right. You've spoken in terms of the core and then the concentric circles. Does Bihar, your state, form part of that core, or it's part of that concentric circle?
I was speaking of the core in terms of one party
Okay,
which becomes the, let us say, fulcrum of a
okay,
larger opposition alliance. But in terms of geographical space, no politics in this country can unfold without taking into account states like Bihar.
right,
They account for 40 seats in parliament. They are part of the Hindi heart belt. Uh, in terms of population size, they are huge. Now we are in the process of developing state specific strategies, even for those states where the TMC does not currently have a presence. And in the case of Bihar, we have some time.
right,
The last assembly elections have taken place only recently, and the parliamentary elections are not due for the entire country until 2024. But we have made a beginning and we are in the process of formulating state specific plans which sharpens the edge
right.
of the opposition and the TMC's attack.
Do you personally see for yourself a sort of a larger pan national role now that, as you mentioned, Bihar is not up for any elections anytime soon, and 2024 is still about 2.5, 3 hours, 3 years, 3 years away from us? Where do you see fitting in the larger scheme of things?
Mayank, it's been 72 hours since I joined the TMC.
Yeah,
So I am there as part of contribution to this larger cause. I am there to fulfill any responsibilities that are assigned to me and to make my contribution, however small, in whatever way that I can.
right,
I think some of what this will evolve in the course of time as in the days ahead, as it were.
right.
Right now, I am at the party's disposal and at the disposal of the leader of the party.
You were out of sort of active party politics for a bit, and as you scoured around, what were the strengths you saw in the TMC that led you to it?
Well, after I was expelled along with Prashant Kishore by the same letter on the same day at the same time for our opposition on grounds of principle, not only to the CAA, which, if pushed to the wall, we could have lived with, but the hyphenation of the CAA and the NRC,
Right.
a matter of principle. In the interregnum between that expulsion and my current joining the TMC, I have had a lot of time for reflection and analysis. It is my view that the Congress as constituted today is either unwilling or unable to play the lead role in opposition politics. In the space that was ceded by a Congress that seems unwilling or unable to play the lead role in the larger opposition in the country, I see TMC as the most fitting instrument to take on that role and to fill that void.
I
You
see.
asked me why. Am I
Right.
audible, Mayank?
You are. But the picture is a problem, but I think we'll have to live with it.
Okay. It's more important that I be heard than be seen. So, uh, so I think the TMC has just won
Right.
with a remarkably emphatic margin a victory in West Bengal, which is a large state.
Hmm.
The TMC, in its leader in Mamata Banerjee, has a person who has the fire in her belly to take on the BJP. The TMC also is unrelentingly focused on providing a challenge to the BJP's policies and actions and is therefore prepared in an organized manner to increase its footprint to a national basis.
Right.
To my mind, therefore, the TMC in its national avatar, because this transformation is in the making,
Right.
where we are working on its constitution, we are working on the name, we are working on many aspects which are the natural appurtenances of a national party instead of a largely but not only regional outfit. So, in that sense, I feel that the TMC under Mamata Banerjee ji can play that role that, in my view, makes it a pivotal party on the national scene in India.
I see. Rahul Gandhi might take issue with your your contention that his party is ceding the role of the main opposition.
Well, since 2012, there have been 72 elections. The Congress has won five.
Mhm.
So while it's not my business to speak against any other party, but let us also accept that the current Congress is not what the great Congress that brought us freedom was. We believe in the ideals and value systems of the Congress of our founding fathers and in those values which are enshrined in our constitution.
Right.
But the Congress, as currently constituted, in our view, is not able to effectively translate these ideals and values into electoral success. How long will the nation wait for the Congress to transform or rejuvenate itself?
Right.
And if the perception is that, as I said earlier, it is unwilling or unable to do so, will this country continue to proceed without an organized opposition, a robust opposition which any democracy needs? This is the question before us.
Right. Uh,
And
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
so that is why I believe that ultimately politics is not about what a person on an individual basis feels or reacts to. It is about an analysis of the objective situation on the ground. And the Congress party should have long ago accepted some hard realities, which unfortunately it has not.
Right. You've spoken of a robust opposition being essential to democracy. We have just witnessed what a robust opposition of a certain kind can do in terms of forcing the prime minister to repeal the agricultural reform laws. Do you see that as a sort of a constituency, the farming constituency, as something that the TMC might look at more closely as it expands its footprint?
No, man, there are large constituencies over and above the farmers, which the BJP has either neglected or deliberately alienated. There are the farmers, of
Right.
course. There are the millions upon millions of the unemployed. There are the millions and the millions who are suffering from stagnating or declining incomes and high inflation.
Right.
There are the many states that are worried about the erosion of federalism. There are the millions of Hindus who are wondering in what direction the BJP is taking their religion and converting it into a Wahhabi faith which is completely alien to the essential tenets of the grandeur of Hinduism.
Right.
There is the rising inequality within the country where apparently certain crony capitalists seem to be benefiting hugely disproportionately than the rest of the people. There are constituencies upon constituencies. It is incumbent on any party worth its salt if it wishes to play an effective role in the opposition to harness these discontents within a democratic framework
Right.
and make the BJP answerable and accountable for its policies and actions.
Yeah. No, the reason for mentioning the farmer constituency is because it's for the first time that a concerted attempt has forced the prime minister not only on the back foot, but even expediently, even if it is expediently, apologize and reverse policies which were so dear to him. So, to that extent, it's the first time that the BJP and the prime minister personally are up against something so potent.
No, actually, it's not the first time, Maya. It happened in the case of the land acquisition bill.
Mhm.
The government had to backtrack. It
Right,
happened in the case of the CAA NRC protests, where the government has put the entire matter on the back burner. It has happened somewhat more dramatically in the case of the farmers' protests, where the Prime Minister himself had to apologize and agree to repeal the laws.
right,
What does it show you? The Prime Minister, who for a year persisted with these laws, reiterating and restating that this is non negotiable because these laws are good for the country and constitute an indispensable set of reforms.
right,
And 700 farmers died in the process because of this adamancy. And then you have the Prime Minister in the face of elections in Punjab and Uttar Pradesh, suddenly forgetting his principles on favor of economic reform, and as you yourself use the word expediently,
right,
tendering an apology and agreeing to repeal the laws. What does it speak of the BJP? What does it speak of the 56-inch chest of the Prime Minister in terms of his resolve to go ahead with what he believes is right? And above all, what does it tell us about the potency, the power, the potential of democratic protest? So, one of the great myths that the BJP has sold to itself is that the BJP is invincible.
right,
It is not. But the BJP benefits by the absence of an organized, cohesive
right, right.
opposition, which is the imperative, the challenge to which we must respond. And well, let me once again say that, in my view, Mamata Banerjee and the TMC can help in organizing on a pan Indian basis that kind of opposition.
Right. But wouldn't you agree that expediency is intrinsic to politics? It's been the case throughout millennia. I mean, you quoted Chanakya. A lot of what Chanakya said could be distilled down to just pure expediency.
There is expediency and there is idealism. Let me not discount either.
Right.
The BJP clothes its expediency under the garb of idealism. And that needs to be challenged.
Right.
And that is precisely what the Prime Minister's dramatic announcement to repeal the three farm laws reveals.
Uh, what's your sense of how this might play out in the context of Punjab and Uttar Pradesh state elections? Do you think the people might see it as too self serving at the last moment, or they think here is a prime minister who's willing to change?
It's too close to the events for me to make a definitive analysis, and elections, in any case, are difficult to predict.
Right.
But there is an Urdu phrase which I think the Prime Minister has become a victim of. Na khuda hi mila, na visale sanam. Or another phrase, gunah be lazzat. I could neither reach God nor get my beloved. The Prime Minister has fallen flat between several stools, it would appear to. His expedient repealing of the laws did not leave the farmers overwhelmed by euphoric gratitude as he expected, perhaps. They are continuing their struggle
Right.
and asking for all their demands to be met. They have not packed up their clothes on hearing his speech and their luggage and gone back to their homes.
Right.
At the same time, taking this decision so late when 700 farmers, as I said earlier, have lost their lives and sat on the border in blistering heat and the icy cold winters, there is, I believe, the impression of too little, too late.
I see. I see.
And finally, I think that his belief that this may impact the elections has gone a little awry because people don't believe that as it has happened, they have to now genuflect in gratitude.
Right.
So there is a huge trust deficit also.
Right.
So
Uh,
he has neither remained resolutely true to the principles that he espoused with regard to the sanctity of economic reform, nor will he get the electoral dividends that he thought that he may in the short term. And therefore, I think it is a case of na khuda hi mila na visale sanam.
you've studied the TMC for a while, as you mentioned earlier. Where do you think it needs to position itself nationally? Of course, it's a left of center party in terms of the way it looks at the world. But in terms of the rising urban angst that India has seen over the last several years, especially since 2014, how do you think the TMC can position itself in a way that it can get much of what the BJP managed to get?
I think the TMC must, in a sense, metaphorically even, recreate the real Congress,
I see.
which stands for the value systems, the principles of an inclusive, modern, progressive, sensitive, egalitarian republic. And in positioning itself there, it must in some ways bridge the urban rural divide as well. The fact that Mamata Banerjee is a lady adds a huge empathy factor to her appeal. You know, women vote today with their own mind, and there are huge issues of gender disparities,
Right.
and she is a symbol of empowerment. So there are many factors on how to the TMC must position itself, but I would think a centrist party and a party that can restore the sanity in India's democratic framework, which it is missing today. The restoration of sanity.
Uh, I want your view. Just last couple of things. One is, how worried are you about the propensity in the TMC rank and file towards violence on streets? It's been said that in a way it's replicated the communist model in Bengal in deploying a great deal of violence. That's undeniable. That it could be at the lowest level of the party, but it has happened. How do you think the party can combat a reputation like that?
If there has been lawlessness and violence, it should be investigated and it should cease forthwith. Incidentally, this also requires other political parties to uh, follow through. If one political party, and I don't need to name it, believes in combining religion, violence, and lawlessness, religion, violence, and lawlessness, often at a micro situation on the ground, cadres of the other party react. At the same time, I have no hesitation in saying that it is not the intention of the TMC to justify or legitimize any form of lawlessness. And if there has been any in the past, and if that is proven, the TMC must resolve to change the situation.
Right. Uh, have you had personal interactions in prior to as you joined the TMC with Ms. Banerjee? And what kind of interactions were those? Would you care to talk a bit about that?
Well, in public life, you come to know each other, but I must say, I didn't know her very well.
Mhm.
But when on the occasion that I joined her,
Mhm.
I went to call on her, and she was exceptionally gracious. And she said, "We would be honored if you join the party." And she said, "I would rather that you do it today. It's a good day.
I
It's,
see.
it's a good day." And then she very graciously went inside and brought out a shawl for me, which she said she had bro- got from Darjeeling.
I see.
And the Delhi winter is on, and she put it round my shoulders,
Right.
reiterating that the TMC would be happy to have me.
I see.
And then, of course, there is the scarf with the TMC logo, which
Right.
was brought, and she asked the cameras to come in, and in a very gracious manner, she accepted me into the party, and I had joined.
I see. Yeah, on the opposition side, she seems to be the only one who is able to straddle the range of politicking in terms of sometimes highfalutin, sometimes street level, the way the BJP does. Have you personally looked at that aspect of hers as a leader?
You people don't understand. Mamata Banerjee is truly, and I don't say this because I am her
Yeah.
spokesperson now, she's a grassroots leader.
Hmm.
Mayank, there's hardly a bone in her body which has not been broken
Yeah,
as part of her struggle as a grassroots leader.
true.
She lives in a two-roomed apartment.
Yeah,
Sometimes you have I'm told there are difficulty in finding a chair. She has not moved to a chief ministerial mansion. She wears Hawaii chappals.
yeah.
She wears the simplest cotton saris. She lives simply. So these are qualities which appeal to her followers. Where you have leaders who at one time sold chai, as they claim, in wearing suits worth lakhs of rupees. And every time they appear on television to have shawls worth lakhs of rupees wrapped upon themselves. And here is a leader who refuses to get out of Hawaii chappals. or the two-room house in which she lives.
Right. But one can argue that there is calibrated opulence and calibrated modesty on either side. So, which is
No,
not a virtue in itself, as I see it.
Mayank, I don't want to call it calibrated modesty. Whether the opulence is called calibrated or natural, I leave it to you to decide.
Okay.
But this is not calibrated modesty. This is how she is.
That is
This
true.
is
Yeah.
how she lives. This is how she has lived for decades. This is not a stance. Otherwise, the mirror would have cracked somewhere.
Right. Right. And finally, before I let you go, uh, from the TMC standpoint, how do you see India electorally? What could be the next steps in terms of expanding to what kind of states do you think?
We have a state specific plan for all the states in India,
I see, including Gujarat.
including Gujarat.
Okay.
We will have alliances where necessary and where necessary fight on our own. We want to do it in a grassrooted, organized, and planned manner. And as far as how I see where it will be, let us not forget that we began today's conversation by my saying nobody should have the hubris to believe that they have a permanent monopoly on power, nor should the BJP forget that.
Right. Well, on that grand note, Mr. Verma, I want to really thank you for your time. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And
Pleasure is mine.